How does something as small as a seating request at dinner become the spark that burns down a marriage? What began as a harmless moment with my best friend ended with my husband's silent withdrawal, and his revenge was more public, more permanent, and more humiliating than anything I ever imagined. The downtown bistro buzzed with Friday night energy as our group of 8 settled around the large circular table. I smoothed my new dress and smiled at the familiar faces. My husband Owen, our 8-year-old daughter Eva, my parents Victor and Mirabelle, Owen's sharp-tongued sister Ruth, and my childhood friend Jayden. The warm lighting cast everything in a golden glow, and I felt absolutely radiant. "Lyra, you look stunning tonight," Jayden said, his eyes lingering on me a beat too long. "That dress is incredible on you." I felt a flutter of excitement. "Thank you, Jay. You always know exactly what to say." Owen pulled out a chair for me, but I noticed Jayden had positioned himself across the table. That wouldn't do at all. I wanted to sit next to my oldest friend. We had so much catching up to do, and honestly, his attention made me feel alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. "Actually, Owen," I said casually, touching his arm, "would you mind sitting at the end there? I'd love to have Jay sit next to me so we can chat properly. You know how it is with old friends." The words hung in the air like smoke. Owen's hand froze on the chair back. His brown eyes met mine, and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, hurt, then something harder to read. The table fell silent for a moment that stretched uncomfortably long. "Of course," Owen said quietly, his voice carefully neutral. He moved to the end seat without another word. I laughed to break the tension. "Don't look so serious, everyone. It's just a seat. Jay and I haven't had a proper conversation in months." Jayden slid into the chair beside me with a grin. "Thanks, Lyra. Owen won't mind, will you, buddy? We've got years of catching up to do." Owen picked up his menu, his face unreadable. "No problem at all." But I caught the look that passed between my mother and Ruth. Mirabelle's lips pressed into a thin line, and Ruth's dark eyes flashed with something that looked dangerously close to disgust. Even Eva seemed to sense the shift in mood, scooting her chair closer to her father. "So, Jay," I said brightly, determined to salvage the evening, "tell everyone about that amazing project you're working on, the one with the tech startup." As Jayden launched into an animated description of his latest IT consulting gig, I found myself hanging on every word. He was so passionate, so driven. When he gestured, his hand occasionally brushed mine, sending little sparks through me. I felt young again, interesting, desired. "That sounds fascinating," I gushed. "You're so talented, Jay. I've always admired your ambition." From the corner of my eye, I saw Owen's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. He was being ridiculous, honestly. This was just dinner with friends and family. There was nothing wrong with appreciating an old friend's company. "Remember in high school when you said you'd change the world?" I continued, my voice warm with nostalgia. "You're actually doing it." "Well, I had good inspiration," Jayden said, his eyes twinkling. "Certain people always believed in me when others didn't." The waiter arrived to take our orders, and I made sure to lean close to Jayden as we shared the menu, discussing the options in hushed, intimate tones. It felt so natural, so right. Owen had become so distant lately, buried in his teaching work and school responsibilities. When was the last time he'd really looked at me the way Jay was looking at me now? "I'll have the salmon," Owen said curtly when the waiter reached him. "The salmon sounds perfect," I agreed quickly. "Actually, Jay and I will both have the chicken marsala. We always did have similar tastes." Ruth's fork clinked against her water glass with unnecessary force. "How convenient." "Ruth," my father said uncomfortably, clearly trying to keep the peace. "The weather's been nice lately, hasn't it?" But the damage was spreading like spilled wine. Eva picked at her bread roll, her small face troubled. Mirabelle studied her hands with the focused intensity of someone trying very hard not to speak. And Owen had gone completely silent, responding to direct questions with polite monosyllables. As the evening progressed, I found myself gravitating more and more toward Jayden's warmth and attention. He told hilarious stories about his clients, complimented my earrings, and made me feel like the most interesting woman in the room. When he suggested we take a selfie together, I didn't hesitate to lean into him, our faces close together as he snapped several photos. "These are great," he said, showing me the images on his phone. "You're so photogenic, Lyra. Owen's a lucky man." I glanced toward my husband, expecting him to at least acknowledge the compliment, but he was cutting his salmon with mechanical precision, his attention seemingly focused entirely on his plate. "Owen doesn't really do social media," I said with a little laugh. "He's old-fashioned that way." "Nothing wrong with living in the present," Jayden replied, his hand briefly covering mine on the table. "Some of us know how to appreciate what's right in front of us." The gesture was small, innocent really, but I felt the entire table's energy shift. Ruth's eyes narrowed to slits. Mirabelle actually gasped softly. And Owen finally looked up from his plate, his gaze moving from our joined hands to my face with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Excuse me," he said quietly, standing up. "I need some air." He walked away from the table without another word, leaving his dinner half finished. Eva started to follow him, but I caught her hand. "Let Daddy have a moment, sweetheart. He's probably just tired from work." But even as I said it, I felt a small knot of unease forming in my stomach. Owen wasn't dramatic. He didn't storm off or make scenes. His silence felt different somehow, not hurt or angry, but calculating. "Maybe we should call it a night," Mirabelle suggested, her voice tight with disapproval. "Oh, Mom, don't be silly," I said quickly. "Owen will be fine. He's just being sensitive. Jay, tell everyone about that trip you took to San Francisco. The photos you showed me were incredible." As Jayden launched into another story, I pushed down the growing discomfort. This was supposed to be a fun evening. Owen was overreacting to an innocent friendship, and I wasn't going to let his mood ruin everything. But when he returned to the table 10 minutes later, something fundamental had changed. He was polite, even charming to the others, but when he looked at me, it was like looking at a stranger. He paid the entire check without consulting me, helped Eva with her jacket, and made pleasant small talk about weekend plans. The drive home was suffocatingly quiet. Eva fell asleep in the back seat, and I tried several times to start a conversation, but Owen's responses were minimal. When we got home, he carried Eva to bed and then disappeared into his study without saying goodnight. I found him there an hour later, grading papers at his desk. "Owen, can we talk about tonight? I feel like you're upset about something completely innocent." He didn't look up from the papers. "I'm not upset, Lyra. Just tired." "It was just a seat at dinner. Jay's my oldest friend. You know there's nothing." "I know exactly what it was," he said quietly, finally meeting my eyes. "And so do you." The calmness in his voice was somehow more unsettling than if he'd shouted. I waited for him to say more, to explain what he meant, but he simply returned to his grading. That night, for the first time in our 10-year marriage, Owen slept in the guest room. I told myself he was sulking and would get over it. But as I lay alone in our king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something irreversible had just begun. The next morning, Owen's coffee mug sat alone in the sink, a small detail that somehow felt enormous. He'd left for his Saturday morning jog without waking me, something that had never happened before. When he returned, he was polite, but distant, making breakfast for Eva while I scrolled through my phone. Jayden had already posted our selfie from dinner on Instagram with the caption, "Catching up with this amazing woman. Some friendships just get better with time." Old friends, best friends, none are worth it. I felt a thrill seeing myself through his eyes. Radiant, interesting, worthy of public admiration. The likes and comments were already pouring in. My coworker Marina had written, You two are so cute together, with heart eye emojis. Several other friends had commented on how happy I looked. Look, Eva, I said, showing her the phone. Uncle Jay posted a nice picture of us from dinner. Eva glanced at the screen, then at her father's rigid back as he flipped pancakes. Where's Daddy in the picture? He was sitting at the other end of the table, sweetheart. Sometimes not everyone fits in photos. Owen's shoulders tensed slightly, but he didn't turn around. The silence stretched until Eva asked if she could have chocolate chips in her pancakes, and the moment passed. At work on Monday, the attention continued. Marina perched on my desk before I'd even finished my morning coffee, her eyes bright with gossip-hungry curiosity. Okay, spill everything about Saturday night, she demanded. That photo with Jayden was absolutely steamy. The chemistry is obvious even through Instagram. Marina, please. We're just friends. We've known each other since we were kids. Friends don't look at each other like that, honey. And did you see his caption? Worth it? That man is sending signals. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. How did Owen react? I shrugged, trying to appear casual. Owen's being a bit sensitive about it, but he'll get over it. You know how men can be, territorial for no reason. Maybe he has a reason to be territorial, Marina said with a knowing smile. Jayden's gorgeous, successful, and clearly still crazy about you. If I were married to someone as boring as Owen... Owen's not boring, I said automatically, though the words felt hollow. He's just... steady. Steady is code for dull, and we both know it. When's the last time he made you feel the way you looked in that photo? When's the last time he really saw you? Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. When was the last time Owen had complimented my appearance or seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams? When had our conversations become limited to schedules, bills, and Eva's school activities? You deserve to feel appreciated, Marina continued. There's nothing wrong with having a friend who recognizes how amazing you are. That afternoon, Jayden texted me. Had such a great time Saturday. Coffee tomorrow? I have some ideas for that marketing project you mentioned. I stared at the message, my heart beating faster. It was just coffee, just business. There was nothing wrong with meeting an old friend to discuss work. Sounds perfect, I typed back. 2 p.m. at the cafe on 5th Street. Can't wait. Wear that blue dress again. You looked incredible. The compliment sent warmth flooding through me. When was the last time Owen had noticed what I was wearing, let alone commented on it? I deleted the text thread and slipped my phone back into my purse. There was no need to mention a casual coffee meeting to Owen, especially when he was being so unreasonable about everything. The cafe on 5th Street was trendy and intimate, with exposed brick walls and soft jazz playing in the background. Jayden was already waiting when I arrived, looking effortlessly handsome in a charcoal sweater that brought out his eyes. You came, he said, standing to kiss my cheek. The gesture lingered a moment longer than strictly friendly. Of course I came. Why wouldn't I? I thought your husband might have other ideas about us spending time together. I felt a flash of irritation. Owen doesn't control my friendships. I'm a grown woman who can have coffee with whoever I choose. Good, Jayden said, his smile widening. Because I've missed this. I've missed you. We talked for 2 hours, our conversation flowing like wine. Jayden listened to my frustrations about work, my dreams of maybe going back to school, my feelings of being taken for granted at home. He was attentive, engaged, asking thoughtful questions and offering genuine encouragement. You're too smart to be stuck in that administrative job forever, he said earnestly. You should be running your own company, not filing other people's paperwork. Owen thinks I should be grateful for job security. He says dreams are fine, but bills need to be paid. Owen sounds like he's given up on his own dreams and wants you to do the same. That's not love, Lyra. That's fear. His words resonated in a way that made my chest tight. When had Owen stopped believing in me? When had he stopped encouraging me to reach for more? You know, Jayden said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. If you ever wanted to start something new, I have connections. I could help you. The offer hung between us, loaded with possibility and promise. His thumb traced across my knuckles, and I didn't pull away. That's incredibly generous of you. I'd do anything for you, Lyra. I think you know that. The intensity in his voice made my breath catch. This was dangerous territory, but it felt so good to be wanted, to be seen as someone worth pursuing and protecting. When I got home that evening, Owen was helping Eva with her homework at the kitchen table. They looked up when I entered, and I felt suddenly guilty, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly why. "How was work?" Owen asked politely. "Fine, long day." I busied myself sorting through the mail, avoiding his eyes. "How was Eva's day?" "I got an A on my spelling test," Eva announced proudly. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." I kissed the top of her head, grateful for the distraction. "Daddy helped me study," she added. "He made up a song for the hard words." I glanced at Owen, who was already turning back to the homework. Once upon a time, his creativity with Eva would have charmed me. Tonight, it felt like a reproach. My phone buzzed with a text from Jayden. "Thank you for today. You're even more amazing than I remembered. Sweet dreams." I quickly silenced the phone, but not before Owen's eyes flicked toward the sound. He didn't ask who was texting, which somehow felt worse than if he had. That night, he slept in the guest room again. Over the next few weeks, my coffee dates with Jayden became a regular occurrence. Sometimes we met for lunch, sometimes for drinks after work. He was always complimentary, always interested in my thoughts and feelings. He made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I started taking more care with my appearance, buying new clothes, and experimenting with makeup techniques I found on YouTube. The attention at work increased. Male colleagues who'd barely noticed me before started lingering by my desk, making conversation about weekend plans and asking about my Instagram posts. Because yes, Jayden and I had started posting more photos together. Nothing inappropriate, just two friends enjoying life in the city. But the comments were increasingly flirtatious, and I found myself looking forward to each notification. "You two should just get married already," one of his friends commented on a photo of us at a wine bar. "If only life were that simple," Jayden had replied, adding a winking emoji. I screenshotted the exchange and showed it to Marina, who squealed with delight. "He's basically declaring his intentions publicly. How can you not see that he's in love with you?" "He's not in love with me. We're just reconnecting as friends." "Lyra, honey, wake up. This man is courting you. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" The question haunted me as I drove home that evening. What was I going to do? My marriage felt more like a business partnership every day. Two people sharing expenses and child-rearing duties without any real intimacy or excitement. Owen and I barely spoke beyond logistics. He slept in the guest room more often than not. We hadn't been physical in weeks. Meanwhile, Jayden made me feel beautiful, intelligent, worthy of pursuit and attention. With him, I remembered who I used to be before I became just Eva's mum and Owen's wife. That weekend, Owen announced he was taking Eva to visit his mother for the day. He didn't invite me, which stung even though I probably would have declined anyway. I had plans to meet Jayden at his loft apartment to look at some business proposals he'd put together for me. Jayden's place was everything Owen's wasn't. Modern, stylish, with floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Jazz played softly from hidden speakers, and he'd opened a bottle of wine that probably cost more than our weekly grocery budget. "This is incredible," I said, accepting the glass he offered. "You've done so well for yourself, Jay." "Success is meaningless without someone to share it with," he said, his eyes holding mine. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately." We sat close together on his leather sofa, reviewing business plans that became increasingly irrelevant as the wine flowed and the conversation grew more personal. He told me about his loneliness. his regrets about letting me go when we were younger, his growing realization that I was the one who got away. "I was an idiot to let you marry Owen," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I should have fought for you." "Jay, I know you feel it too, Lyra. This connection between us. It's always been there." He was right, and we both knew it. The attraction, the emotional intimacy, the sense that we understood each other in ways our respective partners never could. It was undeniable. When he leaned in to kiss me, I didn't pull away. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as years of suppressed feelings erupted between us. It tasted like wine and possibility, and everything my marriage wasn't. When we finally broke apart, I was breathless and shaking. "I should go," I whispered. "Should and want are two different things," he said gently. "What do you want, Lyra?" I wanted to stay. I wanted to forget about my responsibilities and my marriage and lose myself in someone who made me feel alive. But Eva's face flashed through my mind, and I stepped back. "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need," he said, though his eyes were dark with disappointment. "But don't take too long. Life's short and we've already wasted too many years." I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling from his kiss. Owen and Eva were back, and the house smelled like the pizza they'd picked up for dinner. Everything looked exactly the same, but I felt like a different person had walked through the door. "How was your day?" Owen asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Productive," I managed. "Very productive." He nodded, not pressing for details, and I realized with a mixture of relief and resentment that he'd stopped caring enough to ask real questions. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Jayden's words echoing in my mind. "Life's short, and we've already wasted too many years." Maybe it was time to stop wasting time. 2 weeks later, Eva's school was hosting their annual spring carnival, and I saw it as the perfect opportunity to show everyone, including Owen, that I wasn't going to be controlled or made to feel guilty about my friendship with Jayden. "Jay's coming to the carnival," I announced over breakfast, watching Owen's reaction carefully. He paused in buttering Eva's toast. "I see. He loves kids' events, and he's been asking about Eva. I thought it would be nice for him to see her school." "Yay! Uncle Jay is coming." Eva clapped her hands excitedly. "Can he play ring toss with us, Mummy?" "Of course, sweetheart. Uncle Jay loves games." Owen finished preparing Eva's breakfast without comment, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. Good. Maybe if he felt a little threatened, he'd start appreciating what he had. I spent extra time getting ready that morning, choosing a sundress that Jayden had complimented and styling my hair in loose waves. When I posted a selfie with the caption, "Ready for some family fun at the school carnival," the likes started pouring in immediately. Jayden arrived at the school looking impossibly handsome in khakis and a polo shirt that showed off his athletic build. Several of the other mums turned to look as he approached our family, and I felt a surge of pride that this gorgeous, successful man was there for me. "Lyra, you look absolutely stunning," he said, kissing my cheek in greeting. "And Eva, you've grown so much since I last saw you." Eva beamed under his attention, and I felt vindicated. See, there was nothing wrong with having a charming friend who brought joy to our family. "Owen," Jayden nodded politely to my husband, who returned the greeting with equal coolness. As we walked through the carnival together, I made sure to stay close to Jayden, laughing at his jokes and touching his arm when he said something particularly funny. Other parents watched us with curious eyes, and I could practically feel the gossip starting to percolate. "Let's try the ring toss," I suggested, linking my arm through Jayden's. "You always were good at games." "Only when I have the right motivation," he said, winking at me. We played several games together, with Jayden winning me a large stuffed unicorn that I hugged dramatically for the photo he insisted on taking. Owen trailed behind us with Eva, his face a mask of polite disinterest, but I could sense his growing tension. This is like a real date, Jayden murmured as we waited in line for cotton candy. Except better, because I get to see you being an amazing mum too. The compliment warmed me, especially since Owen rarely acknowledged my parenting anymore. He just expected me to handle everything while he focused on his teaching career. You're sweet, I said, bumping his shoulder playfully. This is fun. I'd forgotten how good it feels to just enjoy myself. You deserve to enjoy yourself every day, he said seriously. You deserve someone who makes you laugh, who sees how incredible you are. His words were like balm on wounds I hadn't realized were still bleeding. When was the last time Owen had told me I was incredible? When was the last time he'd made any effort to make me happy? Photo op, I called out, pulling out my phone. Eva, come here, sweetheart. I positioned myself between Jayden and Eva, with Owen slightly off to the side. As I held up the phone to take a selfie, I made sure the frame captured Jayden's arm around my waist and our bright smiles, while Owen appeared as just a partial figure in the background. Perfect, I said, immediately posting it to Instagram with the caption, making memories with my favorite people. Ja family fun, or blessed Marchas Carnival 2024. Within minutes, the comments started flowing. You and Jay look so happy together. Beautiful family. Wait, who's the guy in the back? Relationship goals. You two are glowing. I showed some of the comments to Jayden, who chuckled and shook his head. Your followers have good eyes, he said. We do look good together. Jay, I started, but he held up a hand. I know. Just friends. But a man can dream, can't he? The afternoon continued in a blur of games, food, and increasingly intimate conversation with Jayden. I found myself making jokes at Owen's expense, laughing about his serious nature and old-fashioned ways. Owen thinks social media is a waste of time, I told Jayden, loudly enough for several other parents to hear. He doesn't understand that some of us like to actually document our lives and connect with people. Different generations, I guess, Jayden replied diplomatically, though his eyes danced with amusement. We're the same age, I protested, laughing. He just acts like an old man sometimes. No sense of adventure, no spontaneity. Everything has to be planned and practical. I caught sight of Owen's face as I said this, and something flickered across his expression. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment, but he didn't say anything, just took Eva's hand and suggested they go buy some lemonade. Was that too mean? I asked Jayden, though I was still smiling. Honesty isn't mean, he said. Besides, if he can't handle a little teasing, maybe that says something about him, not you. As the afternoon wore on, I noticed Owen becoming increasingly quiet. He spoke only when directly addressed, spent most of his time focused on Eva, and seemed to be avoiding eye contact with me entirely. Several times, I caught him checking his watch, clearly ready for the day to end. When it was time for the group photo with Eva's class, I made sure to position myself next to Jayden, our shoulders touching as we smiled for the camera. Owen stood on the far end of the group, his expression unreadable. One more, the photographer called out. Everyone say cheese. As the camera clicked, I felt Jayden's hand briefly squeeze mine, and I squeezed back. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but it sent electricity through me. The drive home was tense. Eva chattered excitedly about the carnival in the back seat, while Owen and I sat in silence. I scrolled through the photos from the day, selecting the best ones to post later. Uncle Jay is so funny, Eva said. He told the best jokes. Did you hear the one about the elephant, Daddy? I heard it, Owen said quietly, and he won Mommy that big unicorn. That was so nice of him. Very nice, Owen agreed, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. That evening, after Eva was in bed, I found Owen in his study again, but this time he wasn't grading papers. He was staring at his laptop screen with an intensity that made me curious. What are you working on? I asked, trying to see over his shoulder. He quickly minimized the window. Just some research for lesson plans. On a Saturday night, Owen, you work too much. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. You need to learn how to have fun. He turned to look at me, and I was startled by the coldness in his eyes. Is that what today was about? Teaching me how to have fun? Today was about Eva's school carnival. I'm sorry if you didn't enjoy yourself, but I had a great time. Jay is wonderful with Eva, and it's nice to spend time with someone who actually appreciates my company. I see. Owen's voice was eerily calm. And how exactly does Jayden show his appreciation? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, Lyra, that I spent the entire afternoon watching you flirt with another man in front of our daughter, our friends, and our entire community. I watched you make jokes at my expense and pose for photos that deliberately excluded me. So I'm curious, how exactly does this appreciation manifest itself? His words hit like cold water. I wasn't flirting. Jay and I are friends. Just because you're jealous doesn't mean— I'm not jealous, Owen interrupted, standing up from his desk. I'm humiliated. There's a difference. Owen, you're being ridiculous. Nothing inappropriate happened today. Nothing inappropriate? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lyra, do you have any idea what people were saying today? Do you know what the other parents think is going on between you and Jayden? I don't care what other people think. Well, you should, because Eva has to go to school with their children. I have to work with some of their spouses, and now everyone in our community thinks my wife is having an affair. The word hung between us like a slap. Affair. As if what Jayden and I had was sordid, wrong, shameful. That's not what's happening, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Owen asked quietly. Then tell me, Lyra, when you look at Jayden, what do you see? And when you look at me, what do you see? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Because the truth was too complicated, too painful, too revealing. That's what I thought, Owen said, turning back to his computer. I'll be sleeping in the guest room again tonight. And Lyra? Next time you want to humiliate me publicly, just ask for a divorce first. It would be kinder. He'd never spoken to me like that before, with such quiet finality. As I left his study, I felt something shift between us, something that might not be repairable. But instead of examining that feeling, I pushed it down and reached for my phone. Jayden had sent me a text. Thank you for today. Seeing you with Eva just confirmed what I already knew. You're going to make some man very happy someday. I hope he deserves you. The message made my heart race. Someone did see my worth. Someone did appreciate me. I just wasn't sure it was the right someone anymore. The week following the carnival, the atmosphere in our house grew increasingly arctic. Owen spoke to me only when necessary, conducted conversations about schedules and logistics with the efficiency of a business meeting. He was warm and attentive with Eva, but toward me, he maintained a polite distance that was somehow worse than anger would have been. I told myself I didn't care. If he wanted to sulk about my friendship with Jayden, that was his choice. I had better things to focus on, like the text messages that had been flowing between Jay and me with increasing frequency and intimacy. Missing you today, he'd written that morning. Coffee later, I have something I want to discuss with you. Can't wait, I'd replied, adding a heart emoji before I could stop myself. We met at a new cafe across town, somewhere we were less likely to run into anyone from our usual circles. Jayden was waiting in a corner booth, looking serious and handsome in his navy suit. You look like you have something important on your mind, I said, sliding in across from him. I do. He reached across the table and took my hands in his. Lyra, I've been thinking about us, about what we're doing here. My heart started beating faster. What do you mean? I mean, I'm tired of pretending this is just friendship. I'm tired of watching you go home to a man who doesn't appreciate you, who doesn't see how amazing you are. His thumbs traced across my knuckles. I want more than stolen coffee dates and careful text messages. The words I'd been longing to hear and dreading in equal measure. Jay, I know it's complicated. I know you have Eva to think about. But Lyra, life is short. We're not getting any younger, and we've already wasted so many years. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying I love you. I've always loved you. And I think you love me too. The confession hung between us, beautiful and terrifying. Because he was right. I did love him. I loved the way he made me feel, the way he saw me, the excitement and possibility he represented. I do love you, I whispered. But it's not that simple. I have a family, responsibilities. You have a marriage that's already over and everything but paperwork. When's the last time Owen made you feel the way you feel right now? When's the last time he told you he loved you and meant it? I couldn't answer because I couldn't remember. Owen and I had been going through the motions for so long that I'd forgotten what real passion felt like. Think about it, Jayden said, lifting my hands to his lips and kissing my knuckles softly. Think about what you really want your life to look like, because I'm ready to give you everything. Love, adventure, the life you deserve. I left the cafe in a daze, Jayden's words echoing in my mind. He was offering me everything I'd been craving. Romance, excitement, a fresh start with someone who truly valued me. When I got home, I found Owen and Eva in the kitchen, working together on what looked like a science project. They were laughing about something, their heads bent close together over a baking soda volcano, and for a moment, I felt a pang of something that might have been regret. "Mommy," Eva called out excitedly, "look what Daddy and I made. It's going to erupt." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, but my mind was still back at the cafe with Jayden. Owen glanced up at me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Hope, maybe, that I might join their little science experiment. But I was too emotionally overwhelmed to deal with family bonding right now. "I have some emails to catch up on," I said, heading toward the stairs. "You two have fun with your volcano." The hope in Owen's expression died, replaced by that familiar mask of polite indifference. That weekend, my mother called to invite us to Sunday lunch. I tried to beg off, but she insisted, and I knew she'd been hearing gossip about the carnival. "Bring the whole family," she said pointedly. "Your father is making his famous barbecue." The lunch was a minefield from the moment we arrived. Ruth was there with her husband and kids, and she greeted me with a coolness that could have frozen water. My mother was overly bright and chatty, the way she got when she was trying to avoid addressing something unpleasant. "So, Lyra," Ruth said as we sat down to eat, "I saw your Instagram post from the carnival. That friend of yours certainly seems attentive." "Jayden's an old friend," I said defensively. "We've known each other since childhood." "How nice that you're reconnecting," my mother said carefully. "Though I do think married women should be cautious about close friendships with men." "Mom, it's 2024. Men and women can be friends without it meaning anything inappropriate." "Of course they can," Ruth said with false sweetness. "But when those friendships start affecting the family dynamic, it might be time to reevaluate priorities." I felt my temper flaring. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Ruth, but—" "I'm not implying anything," she interrupted. "I'm stating facts. Eva has been asking her cousins why Daddy seems sad all the time. The other parents at school are talking. And Owen looks like he hasn't slept in weeks." All eyes turned to Owen, who was cutting his barbecue with mechanical precision. He didn't look up, didn't defend me or deny Ruth's accusations. "Owen's fine," I said, though even I could hear how hollow the words sounded. "He's just been busy with work." "Is that what we're calling it?" Ruth's voice was sharp now, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my brother is being publicly humiliated while his wife parades around with another man. "Ruth, that's enough," my father said uncomfortably. "No, Dad, it's not enough. Someone needs to say what everyone's thinking." Ruth turned back to me, her eyes blazing. "You're acting like a teenager, Lyra. You have a good husband, a beautiful daughter, and a stable life. But apparently, that's not exciting enough for you anymore." "You don't know what you're talking about," I snapped. "You don't know what my marriage is like, what I need. I know what I see, and what I see is a woman who's so desperate for attention that she's willing to destroy her family to get it. The words hit like physical blows. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. Sit down, Lyra, my mother said quietly. Ruth is speaking out of concern for the family. Concern? This is concern. I looked around the table at their faces, disappointed, worried, judgmental. I'm trying to find some happiness in my life, and all of you are acting like I'm committing a crime. What about Owen's happiness? Ruth asked. What about Eva's? Or do only your feelings matter? I glanced at Owen, expecting him to say something, to defend me, or at least acknowledge that our marriage had problems that existed long before Jayden came back into my life. But he just sat there silent, letting his sister attack me without saying a word. Fine, I said, grabbing my purse. If this is how everyone feels, I'll just leave. Lyra, don't go, my father said, but I was already heading for the door. Mummy, where are you going? Eva called after me, confusion and distress clear in her voice. I paused, torn between my anger and my love for my daughter. I just need some air, sweetheart. I'll be back. But as I drove away from my parents' house, I wasn't sure that was true. I was tired of being judged, tired of being made to feel guilty for wanting more than the lukewarm existence my marriage had become. I found myself driving to Jayden's apartment building. He answered the door in jeans and a t-shirt, looking surprised but pleased to see me. Lyra, what's wrong? You look upset. Can I come in? I need to be somewhere I'm wanted. He pulled me into his arms without hesitation, and I melted against him, breathing in his familiar scent and letting his warmth chase away the chill of my family's disapproval. Tell me what happened, he said, leading me to his couch. I poured out the whole story. Ruth's accusations, my mother's disappointment, Owen's silence. Jayden listened without judgment, stroking my hair and making sympathetic noises. They're just scared, he said when I finished. Scared that you're outgrowing the small life they think you should be satisfied with. Maybe I am outgrowing it. Maybe you should be. Lyra, you're too vibrant, too intelligent, too full of life to waste away in a marriage that doesn't fulfill you. His words were exactly what I needed to hear. When he kissed me this time, I didn't pull away. I kissed him back with all the frustration and longing and desperation I'd been carrying. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Stay, he whispered against my lips. Stay with me tonight. For a moment I almost said yes, almost let myself fall completely into this new life he was offering. But then I thought of Ava, probably wondering where I was, maybe crying because Mommy had left angry. I can't, I said, though it took every ounce of willpower I possessed. Not yet, but soon, I promise. I drove home to find Owen sitting alone at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold hours ago. Where's Eva? I asked. In bed. She was worried about you. The simple statement was an accusation, and we both knew it. I needed some air. At Jayden's apartment? The question stopped me cold. How did you... I called your phone. You didn't answer. So I called your mother, thinking maybe you'd gone back there. She said you'd left hours ago. He looked up at me with eyes that were tired and sad, and something else I couldn't quite identify. I tracked your phone, Lyra. I know where you were. The admission hung between us like a confession. He'd tracked my phone. My husband had felt compelled to track my movements because he couldn't trust me to tell him the truth. Owen, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear an explanation for why my wife disappeared during a family crisis and ended up at another man's apartment for 3 hours. We just talked. I was upset about what Ruth said, and I needed someone who would listen without judging me. Someone who would tell you what you wanted to hear, you mean? His words were quiet, but they cut deep because they were true. Maybe I did need to hear something other than criticism and accusations. And what did Jayden tell you, Lyra? What wisdom did he share that made 3 hours of his company worth abandoning your daughter when she was scared and confused? I couldn't answer, because the truth, That Jayden had kissed me, had asked me to stay, had offered me a life free from this exact kind of confrontation, would destroy everything. I think, Owen said when my silence stretched too long, that we need to have a serious conversation about what we both want from this marriage, but not tonight. Tonight, I just want to know that our daughter is going to wake up tomorrow with both her parents in the house. Of course she will. Owen, I would never... A week ago, I would have agreed with you. Tonight, I'm not so sure. He stood up, dumping his cold coffee in the sink. I'll be in the guest room, again. As he walked past me toward the stairs, he paused. For what it's worth, Lyra, Ruth was wrong about one thing. I'm not sad, I'm disappointed. There's a difference. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen, trying to process what had just happened. Owen had tracked my phone. He knew I'd been at Jayden's apartment, and instead of exploding with anger or demanding explanations, he'd simply expressed disappointment. Somehow, that felt worse than if he'd screamed at me. My phone buzzed with a text from Jayden. Are you okay? You seemed shaken when you left. I'm here if you need me. Always. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without responding. For the first time since this whole thing started, I wasn't sure what I needed anymore. The next few weeks passed in a strange, suspended tension. Owen maintained his polite distance, speaking to me only about practical matters, Eva's schedule, household bills, his mother's upcoming birthday. He slept in the guest room every night and left for work earlier than usual, often before Eva and I were even awake. Meanwhile, my relationship with Jayden intensified in inverse proportion to the deterioration of my marriage. We texted constantly throughout the day, met for coffee or drinks several times a week, and spent hours on the phone when we couldn't see each other in person. He's punishing you with silence, Jayden said during one of our lunch dates. It's emotional manipulation, Lyra, a way of controlling you without having to actually engage with the real problems in your marriage. Maybe he's just processing everything. Owen's not a confrontational person. Or maybe he's hoping you'll get tired of being ignored and just give up on having any life outside of his narrow expectations. Jayden's interpretation felt both harsh and accurate. Owen's withdrawal did feel punitive, like he was trying to make me feel guilty for wanting more than our stagnant routine. At work, Marina had become my primary confidant and cheerleader, encouraging me to follow my heart and stop settling for mediocrity. Life is too short to stay in a loveless marriage, she said during one of our coffee breaks. You and Jayden are obviously meant to be together. Everyone can see it. It's not that simple. There's Eva to consider, and the divorce would be messy. Divorce is always messy, but so is living a lie. Do you want Eva to grow up thinking that marriage means two people who barely speak to each other and sleep in separate rooms? Her words stung because they painted an accurate picture of what my home life had become. Eva had indeed started asking why Daddy slept in the guest room, why Mommy and Daddy didn't watch movies together anymore, why everyone seemed so quiet all the time. Maybe we need counseling, I said half-heartedly. Counseling only works when both people want to save the marriage. Does Owen seem like he's interested in fighting for you? The question haunted me because the answer was clearly no. Owen had made no effort to win me back, to address our problems, or even to compete with Jayden for my attention. He'd simply withdrawn, as if he'd already given up. That weekend, I decided to make one last attempt at fixing things. I planned an elaborate family dinner, complete with Owen's favorite meal and a carefully set table. I even bought a new dress and spent extra time on my hair and makeup. This is nice, Owen said politely when he saw the dining room. What's the occasion? No occasion. I just thought it would be good for us to have a proper family dinner together. Eva was delighted with the formal table setting and the special meal. She chatted happily throughout dinner, telling us about her school projects and her friends' latest dramas. For brief moments, it almost felt like we were a normal family again. Remember when we used to do this every Sunday? I said to Owen as Eva described her art class painting. We should start that tradition again. Traditions require consistency, Owen replied mildly. That's been challenging lately. The comment was a subtle dig at my frequent absences, but I let it slide. I was trying to rebuild bridges, not burn them down. After Eva went to bed, I suggested we watch a movie together, something we hadn't done in months. Owen agreed, and we settled on the couch with a bottle of wine and a romantic comedy that had been on my watch list. For the first hour, things felt almost normal. We laughed at the same jokes, made comments about the actors, shared the wine. I found myself remembering why I'd fallen in love with Owen in the first place. His dry sense of humor, his intelligence, the way he could make even mundane observations sound interesting. But then my phone buzzed with a text from Jayden, and everything shifted. Missing you tonight. Hope you're not too bored with domestic life. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I quickly silenced the phone, but Owen had noticed the interruption. Important message? He asked casually. Just Marina, asking about work stuff. The lie came easily, automatically, and I hated myself for it, even as the words left my mouth. But what was I supposed to say? That the man I'd been having an emotional affair with was texting me while I tried to salvage my marriage? Owen nodded and turned back to the movie, but I could feel the distance opening between us again. The rest of the film passed in strained silence, and when it ended, Owen stood up immediately. Thank you for dinner. It was nice. Owen, wait. I caught his hand as he started to leave. Can we talk? Really talk? He looked down at our joined hands for a long moment. What do you want to talk about, Lyra? About us. About what's been happening. About how we fix this. Do you want to fix this? The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. Did I want to fix my marriage, or did I want to be free to pursue the excitement and passion that Jayden offered? I want us to be happy, I said finally. That's not the same thing. He was right, and we both knew it. Wanting to be happy and wanting to save our marriage were two entirely different goals. I don't know how to answer that, I admitted. Then we don't have anything to talk about yet. He gently extracted his hand from mine. When you figure out what you actually want, let me know. But Lyra, I won't compete with Jayden for your attention. I won't beg you to choose your family over whatever fantasy he's selling you. Either you want to be here, or you don't. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Everything else is just noise. He left me sitting alone on the couch, the credits of the romantic comedy rolling across the screen, feeling more confused and frustrated than ever. The next morning, I woke to find Owen already gone, and a note on the kitchen counter. Taking Eva to my mother's for the weekend. Back Sunday evening. O. The note was polite but final, and I realized he'd made the plans without consulting me. He was taking our daughter away for the weekend, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my choices. I called Jayden immediately. He's trying to manipulate you, Jayden said when I explained the situation. Taking Eva away, making you feel guilty and isolated, it's a classic control tactic. Maybe he just wants some time alone with his daughter. Or maybe he's punishing you for trying to have a life outside his control. Lyra, this is exactly what I've been talking about. He's not fighting for your marriage. He's trying to break your spirit. Jayden's interpretation made sense, and it fed into my growing resentment toward Owen's passive-aggressive behavior. Come over, Jayden said. Don't spend the weekend alone, analyzing every conversation and second-guessing yourself. Come be with someone who actually wants your company. I spent Saturday at Jayden's apartment, and for the first time in weeks, I felt truly relaxed. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, talked about our dreams and plans for the future. It felt natural, easy, right. This could be our life, Jayden said as we cuddled on his couch. No drama, no walking on eggshells, no sleeping in separate rooms. Just two people who love each other, building something beautiful together. What about Eva? Eva would love having a stepfather who adores her mother. Kids adjust, Lyra. They're more resilient than we give them credit for. That night, I stayed over for the first time. We made love with a passion and tenderness that reminded me of everything that had been missing from my marriage. In Jayden's arms, I felt desired, cherished, alive. Sunday morning, I posted a photo on Instagram, just a coffee cup and a window view, but taken from Jayden's apartment. The caption read, "Sometimes you need a change of scenery to see clearly." New perspectives, Jachis grateful, Chashis Chan Sunday morning. The post was deliberately vague, but I knew people would read between the lines. Marina commented immediately, "You deserve all the happiness in the world." Several other friends liked the post and added supportive comments. But there was one comment that made my blood run cold. Ruth had written, "Eva's asking where her mother is. Thought you should know." I deleted the comment immediately, but the damage was done. Owen's family knew I hadn't come home Saturday night. They knew I'd spent the night somewhere else while my husband took care of our daughter. When Owen and Eva returned Sunday evening, the atmosphere in the house was different. Owen was polite but distant, and Eva seemed subdued, clinging to her father more than usual. "How was your weekend?" Owen asked as he helped Eva with her backpack. "Quiet, restful." I couldn't meet his eyes. "How was your mother's?" "Fine. Eva enjoyed seeing her cousins." The conversation was stilted, formal, like strangers making small talk. Eva picked up on the tension immediately. "Mummy, why weren't you here when we got home yesterday?" she asked innocently. My heart stopped. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Daddy called to tell you we were leaving Grandma's, but you didn't answer, and when we got home your bed wasn't slept in." Out of the mouths of babes, my 8-year-old daughter had just exposed my lie without even realizing it. "I was out with Marina," I said quickly. "We had a girls' night and I stayed at her place." Eva nodded, accepting the explanation easily, but Owen's eyes met mine across the room, and I saw something new there. Not hurt or anger, but a kind of resigned clarity. "I see," he said quietly. "Well, I'm glad you had a restful weekend." That night, I found a business card on my nightstand, a divorce attorney's card with a handwritten note. "Consultation scheduled for Tuesday, 10 a.m. Both parties requested to attend." My hand shook as I read the note. Owen wasn't just withdrawing anymore. He was taking action. I tried to convince myself that this was just a scare tactic, an attempt to shock me into compliance. But deep down, I knew better. Owen didn't make empty threats. If he'd scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney, it meant he'd already made his decision. The question was, what was mine going to be? Tuesday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching my mood as I sat in my car outside the law office building. I'd barely slept the night before, alternating between panic and defiance. Part of me wanted to drive away, to pretend this wasn't happening. But I knew Owen well enough to understand that avoiding this meeting would only make things worse. The law office was located in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel that reflected the cloudy sky. I'd expected something more traditional, more intimidating. Instead, it looked like any other professional office building, which somehow made everything feel more real and final. I found Owen in the lobby, sitting calmly in one of the modern chairs, reading something on his phone. He was dressed in his best suit, the navy one I'd bought him for his promotion last year, and he looked composed, almost serene. When he saw me, he stood politely. "Lyra, thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? There's always a choice. That's rather the point of this meeting. His tone was maddeningly reasonable, which only increased my anxiety. I'd prepared for anger, accusations, emotional manipulation. I hadn't prepared for this calm, methodical version of my husband. We rode the elevator to the 15th floor in silence. The law offices of Henderson, Walsh and Associates occupied the entire floor, with expensive-looking artwork and fresh flowers in the reception area. A receptionist directed us to a conference room where a middle-aged woman in a crisp black suit was waiting. "Mr. and Mrs. Quennell, I'm Patricia Henderson. Thank you both for coming today. She gestured for us to sit at a polished conference table that could have seated 12 people. I chose a chair across from Owen, noting that he'd brought a manila folder with him that looked suspiciously thick. Before we begin, Ms. Henderson said, I want to clarify that I represent Mr. Quennell in this matter. Mrs. Quennell, you're welcome to have your own attorney present for any future proceedings. Future proceedings? My voice came out higher than intended. I thought this was just a consultation. Owen opened his folder and removed a document that he slid across the table to me. It's a petition for dissolution of marriage. I filed it yesterday. The words on the page blurred as I tried to process what I was seeing. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, custody arrangements. This wasn't a threat or a scare tactic. Owen had actually filed for divorce. You can't be serious, I said, looking up at his calm face. Owen, we can work this out. We just need counseling, communication. I've prepared a comprehensive documentation of the factors that led to this decision, Owen interrupted, opening his folder again. I think it's important that everyone understands the scope of the situation. What came out of that folder was the most methodical destruction of my life I could have imagined. Owen had been busy during those quiet weeks when I thought he was just sulking. First, he produced printed screenshots of my Instagram posts from the past 3 months, arranged chronologically. Seeing them laid out like that, I realized how obvious the progression was. From innocent photos with Jayden to increasingly intimate captions and poses, culminating in the coffee cup photo from his apartment. Social media posts documenting Mrs. Quennell's relationship with Jayden Reese, Owen said matter-of-factly. Note the escalating intimacy and the deliberate exclusion of family members from photos and captions. Next came printed copies of text messages. My heart stopped as I recognized conversations between Jayden and me, including some of our more flirtatious exchanges. How did you get these? I demanded. We have a shared phone plan, Owen replied calmly. The records are available to both account holders. I've highlighted the messages that demonstrate the emotional and physical nature of the relationship. Ms. Henderson was taking notes as Owen continued his presentation. Bank statements showing my frequent visits to restaurants and cafes during work hours. Credit card receipts from the new clothes I'd bought. Even my work computer's browsing history, apparently obtained through some IT contact of Owen's. This is insane, I said, my voice rising. You've been spying on me, collecting evidence like I'm some kind of criminal. I've been documenting the breakdown of our marriage, Owen corrected, which brings me to the impact on our daughter. He produced a folder of Eva's artwork from the past month, family drawings that showed a progression from happy family scenes to pictures of a sad daddy sitting alone while Mommy stood with another man. There were also notes from Eva's teacher expressing concern about her withdrawn behavior and questions about her parents' relationship. Ava has been asking her teacher why Daddy seems sad and why Mommy is always on her phone, Owen said. She's been acting out at school and having trouble sleeping. The evidence was devastating, but Owen wasn't finished. He produced statements from family members, Ruth, my own mother, even my father, expressing concern about my behavior and its impact on Eva. Your own mother wrote this? I asked, reading Mirabelle's carefully worded statement about my concerning choices and her worry for her granddaughter's well-being. She was reluctant, but she felt Eva's welfare was more important than protecting your feelings. Finally, Owen produced a timeline of my movements over the past month, cross-referenced with my lies about where I'd been. Coffee dates I'd claimed were work meetings. The Saturday night I'd supposedly spent with Marina, but had actually been at Jayden's apartment. This is harassment, I said desperately. No judge is going to accept evidence obtained through stalking and invasion of privacy. Ms. Henderson looked up from her notes. Actually, Mrs. Quennell, everything your husband has presented was obtained legally. Phone records from a shared account, social media posts that were publicly visible, and witness statements from concerned family members are all admissible. I want my own lawyer, I said. Of course, Owen replied, but I wanted you to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with before you make any decisions about how to proceed. What decisions? You've already filed for divorce. I've filed a petition. You can contest it, which would mean a lengthy court battle where all of this evidence becomes public record, or you can agree to an uncontested dissolution with the terms I'm proposing. He slid another document across the table. The custody arrangement was fair but firm. Joint legal custody, but primary physical custody to Owen, with my visitation contingent on certain conditions. Contingent on what conditions? Completion of counselling, termination of the relationship with Mr. Reese, and a morality clause regarding future relationships while Eva is a minor. The terms were humiliating but not unreasonable. Owen was offering me a way out that would preserve some dignity and protect Eva from a messy court battle. But it would mean giving up Jayden, submitting to counselling, and essentially admitting that I'd been wrong about everything. I need time to think about this, I said. Take all the time you need, Owen replied. But I should mention that I've already spoken to the school about the situation, and to my principal about requesting a transfer to another district. Eva and I will be starting fresh somewhere else at the end of the school year. You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm not taking her away. I'm giving her a stable home environment with a parent who puts her needs first. You're welcome to be part of that, but only if you're willing to prioritize being her mother over whatever this thing with Jayden is supposed to be. The meeting ended with me in tears, and Owen looking like he was discussing lesson plans. As we waited for the elevator, I made one last desperate attempt. Owen, please, I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. I'll end things with Jay, we'll go to counselling, we'll start over. Lyra, he said quietly, do you love me? The question caught me completely off guard. What? It's a simple question. Do you love me? Not our history, not our family, not the security I provide. Me. Do you love me? I opened my mouth to say yes automatically, but the word wouldn't come. Because the honest answer was that I didn't know anymore. I loved the idea of Owen, the safety he represented, the life we'd built together. But did I love him, the man standing in front of me? I thought so, he said when my silence stretched too long. That's why I'm doing this, Lyra. Not to punish you, but to free both of us to find something real. The elevator arrived and Owen stepped inside. You have 2 weeks to decide how you want to proceed. After that, I'll assume you want to contest the divorce, and everything becomes public record. As the doors closed between us, I realized that my husband, quiet, methodical Owen, had just orchestrated the most thorough and devastating revenge I could have imagined. He'd used my own choices against me, turned my family against me, and offered me a way out that required complete capitulation. And the most horrible part was that he was right about everything. I drove home in a daze, my phone buzzing with a text from Jayden. How did the meeting go? Ready to start our new life together? But as I pulled into the driveway of the house where I'd raised my daughter, where I'd built a life that was boring but stable, I realized that some choices can't be undone. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Owen had given me exactly what I thought I wanted, my freedom. The question now was whether I was brave enough to pay the price for it. 2 days later, I signed the uncontested divorce papers. Jayden was furious, accusing me of letting Owen manipulate me into giving up our chance at happiness. But I'd seen the evidence Owen had compiled, had read my daughter's confused questions in her teacher's notes, had watched my own mother choose my husband's side over mine. The truth was that Owen hadn't manipulated me into anything. He'd simply held up a mirror and forced me to see what my choices had cost. Not just him, but Eva, our families, and ultimately myself. 6 months later, Owen and Eva moved to a school district 2 hours away. I see her every other weekend and half the holidays, and she's adjusting well to her new life. Owen was right, kids are resilient. As for Jayden and me, the relationship didn't survive the reality of what it had cost to be together. Without the excitement of secrecy and the thrill of the forbidden, we discovered we didn't have much in common after all. I still work at the same marketing firm, though Marina and I are no longer close. Most of my friends chose sides, and most of them chose Owen's side. The divorce settlement left me comfortable but not wealthy, living alone in a small apartment downtown. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices that night at the bistro. If I'd just let Owen sit next to me, if I'd prioritized my family over my ego, if I'd recognized that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. But mostly, I try not to think about it at all. Because the truth is that Owen was right about one thing. We both deserved better than what our marriage had become. I just wish I'd found a way to end it with dignity instead of destroying everything in pursuit of a fantasy that was never real to begin with. The joke, it turned out, was on me all along.